Breaking news out of the Schoharie County Courthouse. The third Cal Harris murder trial has been ruled a mistrial by the judge.
The defense began its closing arguments in the Calvin Harris murder trial this morning. WENY's DiMattei was in the Schoharie County Courthouse and has the latest.
Today was the first day of closing arguments in the third Cal Harris murder trial here at the Schoharie County Courthouse. It was dominated by defense attorney Bruce Barquette, who spoke to the jury for a little less than 4 hours. He adamantly defended the innocence of his client, Cal Harris, who he says has been wrongly accused of murdering his wife ever since she went missing back in 2001. He caught up with the media after and told us that not only is Cal innocent, but he is confident going into the verdict and thinks that his client will be exonerated when it comes down.
Hopefully the result, we'll see. I mean, the other attorneys who worked for him worked as hard as they could and did everything they could. Hopefully we've done the same, and we'll see what the jury does.
Now, in terms of the prosecution, we expected to hear from them today, but the judge decided there wasn't enough time left to get the entire argument in, so that has been delayed until tomorrow morning. We'll hear from the prosecution starting at 9:15 a.m. He expects the prosecutors to take about 3 hours with their final argument. After they're done, the jury should meet, deliberate, and we could have a verdict in the trial as early as tomorrow afternoon. Reporting at the Schoharie County Courthouse, DiMattei, WENY News.
The end is drawing near in the third murder trial for Calvin Harris. Now, he's a man accused of killing his wife, Mistrial, who's been missing since September 2001. The defense wrapped up their closing arguments yesterday. Today was the prosecution's last chance to weigh in. WENY's DiMattei is live in Schoharie County Courthouse with some shocking details today. Ross?
It was a day full of arguments and one outburst here in the third Cal Harris murder trial. That outburst came from Cal Harris himself, who's been relatively quiet throughout the past 2 days as they've listened to closing arguments yesterday from the defense, today from the prosecution. And today, many times, defense attorney Bruce Barquette objected to some of the language that the prosecutors were using, although many of those objections were overruled by the judge. And at one point, the judge overruled yet another objection, and at that point, Cal went on an outburst himself, saying, quote, 12 weeks I've been going through this. Every benefit you give them, talking about the prosecution, every single one. Shame on you. It's a disgrace. And at that time, Bruce Barquette actually ushered Cal out of the courtroom, followed by his children. Many of them were upset. They were crying. There were other members in the courthouse who were also crying. And that was the way the day ended. That was actually after the closing argument from the prosecution had already ended, although they had kept arguing past that allotted time. So we didn't get to hear from the judge, who was supposed to read some of the charges, and that will happen again tomorrow morning. We'll meet at 9:15. That's when the judge will read those charges to the jury. At that time, they will convene, they will deliberate, and we could have a verdict as early as tomorrow morning. Reporting at the Schoharie County Courthouse, DiMattei, WENY News.
Well, no verdict yet in the Calvin Harris murder trial. The jury is going into day 4 of deliberation. WENY's DiMattei has the latest from Schoharie County Courthouse.
Thanks, Aisha. It was a relatively quiet day here at the Schoharie County Courthouse as jurors continue to deliberate for the third straight day. They've now deliberated a total of 13 hours in that 3-day span. And when you compare it to the first 2 trials against Cal Harris, it's been actually a lot of deliberation. In the first trial, it only took 4 hours for jurors to find Cal Harris guilty, and in the second trial, it took 9 hours over a 2-day span. So here we are headed into day 4 now of deliberations, and still there is no end in sight. Jurors did ask the judge to read back some testimony from earlier in the trial, including testimony from another former nanny of the Harris children, as well as state investigator Michael Myers, who interviewed Cal Harris the day that Michelle went missing at one of his car dealerships. So we will hear that testimony first thing in the morning, starting at 9:15 a.m. And after that, jurors will be back to deliberating as they try and reach a verdict in the third Cal Harris murder trial. Reporting from the Schoharie County Courthouse, DiMattei, WENY News.
Jurors have just finished their 4th day of deliberations in the Calvin Harris murder trial, and at one point today announced they were in a deadlock. We head straight over to Schoharie County, where WENY's DiMattei has the latest from the courthouse.
Good evening, Jennifer. We got off to a bit of a late start here with the court proceedings, but that news was overshadowed by the biggest news of the day, which came down around 12:30 p.m. That's when the judge received a note from the jury saying, "We are deadlocked," essentially meaning that they're so divided on the charges that they have been unable to come to a unanimous verdict. When the judge read, that's actually grounds for a mistrial, but in this case, the judge then read them an Allen charge, which essentially encourages them to continue with their deliberations in the hopes of coming to a unanimous verdict. So that's when the jury then went back, deliberated more, and then sent out another note asking for much of the evidence that's been discussed throughout the course of the trial. So they are now mulling over that evidence, and the day ended with them still deliberating, so still no verdict here at the Schoharie County Courthouse. We will continue with deliberations starting tomorrow morning at 9:15, and we could have a verdict as soon as tomorrow morning. Reporting live at the Schoharie County Courthouse, DiMattei, WENY News.
Jurors finished their 5th day of deliberations today in the Calvin Harris murder trial. Yesterday, they showed signs of being deadlocked, and the story seems to be similar today. So let's head straight over to Schoharie County, where WENY's DiMattei is live with the very latest from today. Ross?
Thanks, Renata. Despite deliberating for a full 7 hours today, the jury still has not reached a unanimous verdict. They have now deliberated for a total of 23 hours in a 5-day period. That's almost an entire day's worth of deliberation. The tension really began to rise around 1 o'clock today when the judge ordered the defense and the prosecution back into the courtroom for an announcement from the jury. Well, we quickly found out that that announcement was just the jury wondering what their schedule is for the upcoming days, if in fact they do have to come back. We now know that they will be coming back tomorrow, but not at their normal time at 9:15 in the morning. Instead, they'll be coming back around 1:30 because some of the members of the jury had pre-scheduled appointments. So they won't be coming back until 1:30, and if they do have to come and report on Friday, if no verdict is reached, they will only serve a half day from about 9:15 a.m. until noon, when they will be dismissed for the weekend. Follow WENY News for all the updates from the 3rd Cal Harris murder trial. For now, reporting live at the Schoharie County Courthouse, DiMattei, WENY News.
Jurors finished their 6th day of deliberations in the Calvin Harris murder trial at 12:30 this afternoon. And you may not believe this, but still no verdict in that case. WENY's DiMattei has been in Schoharie County with the very latest from the courthouse today.
The jury has now had this case in their possession for over a week now, and still there is no verdict in the 3rd Cal Harris murder trial. Today, the jury deliberated for another few hours. It was their 2nd straight half day of deliberation, and yet still no verdict. There was an interesting development towards the end of their deliberation period today when the jury requested 6 pieces of photographic evidence to look over, and all 6 of those pictures were aerial shots of the end of the Harris driveway from the night when Michelle went missing. Some of those were from the defense, some were from the prosecution, and some of them were even marked up by Barbara Thayer, who is the former nanny of the Harris children.
They're going through the evidence, various parts of it. They took careful notes. That's obvious from the notes that they sent out. They were fairly detailed, and I think that that's helpful. As long as they focus on the evidence here, Cal should be okay.
We're not sure why the jury has requested those pictures. We may have more answers to them after the weekend when the jury reconvenes on Monday morning. For now, reporting at the Schoharie County Courthouse, DiMattei, WENY News.
Jurors finished their 8th day of deliberations in the Calvin Harris murder trial today with some developments at the end, of course. So let's head over to Schoharie County, where DiMattei is live from the courthouse. Ross?
Good evening, Renata. For the 2nd time over the 8-day deliberation period, the jury has announced it is deadlocked over the 2nd-degree murder charge against Calvin Harris. This time, the note read a little differently, though. The jury also included that, as a whole, they feel unanimously that to deliberate further would be, quote, fruitless. Now, after the judge heard that, he did motion to apply a 2nd Allen charge, essentially urging the jury to continue its deliberations again for a 2nd time. But then a little bit of a back and forth ensued between the defense and the prosecution. The defense's argument is that we've already done this thing. The jury already announced once that they are deadlocked. This is the 2nd deadlock announcement, and they feel that because of the wording that the jury used, they said, quote, fruitless in describing continuing those deliberations, that they feel there is no real point, and that they then moved for a mistrial, talking about the defense. The prosecution's argument, this case has gone on for 3.5 months. A whole lot has gone into this, and to declare a mistrial after just 2 deadlocks would seem a little silly to the prosecution, so they moved to apply that Allen charge again. But there is no ruling from the judge yet on whether or not to apply that Allen charge. We will hear that argument first thing in the morning between the two sides, and at around 10 o'clock, the judge will decide whether or not to apply that Allen charge and continue with the deliberations. For now, reporting live at the Schoharie County Courthouse, Ross DiMattei, WENY News.
Finishing up their 10th day of deliberations in the Calvin Harris murder trial around noon today, taking a half day, still without a verdict tonight. So let's go to Schoharie County with WENY's Ross DiMattei with the latest from today. Ross.
Today marked the 10th day of jury deliberations here at the 3rd Cal Harris murder trial, but all anyone in the courtroom could talk about today were 2 words: juror appointments. So far, 2 days during that 10-day deliberation period have already been shortened because of pre-scheduled appointments by members of the jury, including today when the jury was dismissed at noon. And just again this morning, another member of the jury requested a half day on Friday because of another appointment. And at that time, head defense attorney Bruce Barquette essentially said enough is enough. This has been an extremely taxing time on all the parties that have been involved, including Cal Harris himself. And he also pointed out that this is what alternate jurors are for. In case a member of the jury can no longer serve or interrupts the flow of deliberations, and he called for that member of the jury who does in fact have an appointment on Friday to be replaced if that appointment is granted and a half day should ensue. So no ruling yet on whether or not he will be replaced or what the judge will do about this issue. As soon as there is a ruling, we will let you know about it. Now, in terms of the jury, they were dismissed at noon today, but they will be back first thing in the morning for a full day of deliberations tomorrow. And if they don't have a verdict by the end of tomorrow, we will see if they do in fact have a half day on Friday. For now, reporting at the Schoharie County Courthouse, Ross DiMattei, WENY News.
Jurors have just finished their 11th day of deliberations in the Calvin Harris murder trial, and they've reached yet another deadlock decision. We head straight over to Schoharie County, where WENY's Ross DiMattei has the latest from the courthouse. Ross.
Good evening, Jennifer. After 50-plus hours of deliberation, the breaking news out of the Schoharie County Courthouse is the jury is deadlocked for the 3rd time. They also included some extra details that said, quote, after extensive discussion and reevaluation of the evidence, we feel each juror is fully set in their opinion, end quote. So they are unanimous at this point, but the interesting part is after that, they also included the fact that some of the jurors did not agree with the deadlock. So a lot to digest in this 3rd deadlock note. No ruling has been made by Judge George Bartlett, but head defense attorney Bruce Barquette did speak with the media after, and he said this thing is pretty much over.
This is over. It really is. Unfortunately, it's over, but this happens from time to time. You've had 2 weeks of deliberations, 3 deadlock notes. They're deadlocked.
Despite what Mr. Barquette said, it is not officially over yet. The jury hasn't been instructed to return tomorrow at noon. The late start is because of another medical appointment for one of the members of the jury, but the lawyers are asked to come in a little bit earlier so they can hash out this note and determine whether or not a mistrial will be ruled or if another Allen charge will be applied and the deliberations will continue. For now, reporting live at the Schoharie County Courthouse, Ross DiMattei, WENY News.
After 11 days of deliberations, jurors were dismissed in the Calvin Harris murder trial, and the judge has granted a mistrial. We head straight over to Schoharie County, where WENY's Ross DiMattei has the latest.
Good evening, Jennifer. After 12 days of what the judge has called extensive deliberations, the jury has been unable to reach a unanimous verdict. Today, the judge stepped in and ruled the case against Calvin Harris a mistrial. This morning, the jury talked about its deadlock note from yesterday, saying not only did it feel deadlocked, but also unanimous in its position on either side, both jury members in favor of a guilty and a not guilty verdict, and that they were too far apart to come to a unanimous verdict. When the judge heard that, he thanked the jury for its service, he dismissed them for good, and ruled the case a mistrial. Now, Cal Harris did speak with the media briefly afterwards, and he took the time to thank his 4 children.
Still, I am thankful to be going home with my family. I have 4 truly amazing children in Taylor, Kayla, Jenna, and Tanner. Your strength, resilience, kindness, and support through these incredibly difficult circumstances have given me the strength to survive. No one should have to go through what we have endured the last 14 years. Without you, this brutal process of trial after trial after trial would have crushed me. With you, I know that together we can meet the next challenge and survive.
District Attorney and lead prosecutor Kirk Martin also briefly spoke with the media after, and when he was asked directly if he would pursue a fourth trial against Cal Harris, he didn't give a direct yes, but he did say it's his job to pursue justice, and he looks forward to continuing to do so. So many people here do feel that he will pursue a fourth trial, but in terms of what's next, both sides, both the prosecution and the defense, will not meet until August to discuss what will happen further. At this time, just to reiterate, the judge has ruled it a mistrial in the third Cal Harris murder trial, but the second-degree murder charge against Harris is still on the table. For now, reporting live from the Schoharie County Courthouse, DiMattei, WENY News.
It's been more than 3 months since Calvin Harris was in a courtroom. The former Tioga County businessman is accused of killing his wife nearly 14 years ago. Neither a body nor a murder weapon were ever found. And today he was back in Schoharie County Court facing a possible fourth murder trial. WENY's DiMattei was there and had the details.
Good evening. Today's pretrial meeting was all about scheduling a possible fourth murder trial for Calvin Harris. That's exactly what they did. After both sides met for about a half an hour, they agreed on a scheduled date for that fourth possible trial, and that day, March 2nd of 2016. But there are some facts you should know that could prevent that trial from ever happening, including this 51-page motion to dismiss submitted by Cal Harris's defense team. It's currently in the possession of both the judge as well as the prosecution. Prosecutors have until October 4th to read through this, analyze it, and then respond to it. And then the defense team has 2 weeks after that point, which would be October 19th, to then respond to the prosecution's response. I know it all sounds confusing, but it basically means that the judge will analyze the responses of both sides and then decide whether or not to dismiss the second-degree murder charge against Harris or to go through with the fourth trial as it's currently scheduled for March 2nd of next year. We did get a chance to catch up with defense attorney Bruce Barquette after the meeting, and he said regardless of whether or not they go through with this fourth trial, his team's confident.
We filed a motion to prevent the fourth trial. We believe that 3 is sufficient. They haven't been able to master or build up enough proof to gain a conviction after 3 tries, but we think that's enough. And then actually the lack of proof in the third trial is so significant that we think legally it prevents a fourth trial.
On the very first page of this motion to dismiss, Barquette and his defense team argue that going to a fourth trial would be a violation of Cal Harris's constitutional rights to double jeopardy, essentially arguing you can't be tried twice for the same crime, which in this case is second-degree murder. We tried to get a comment from the Tioga County prosecutors, but they declined to comment. For now, reporting at the Schoharie County Courthouse, DiMattei, WENY News.